synchronously.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, I went from like, in the tens of plays of 18xx to now I'm topping like 40 something. So
nice.
Yeah.
What's your favorite one?
Okay, yeah, sadly enough, it would be harder for me to make like a top 10 18xx games than it would be Euro games at this point. So it's like so many of them are different. It's like I like this one because it's mergers. I like this one because
So
the only one I'm kind of cooled on is 70.
Yeah, I'm with you on 70. 70 is not one that I like. Was it not 17? There's one where you short each other. I think that might be 17. 18, 17.
17. I haven't had a chance to play that yet.
I hate it so much because it punishes you for doing too well. So like, I played one game and I'm like, man, I'm rocking this company. It's doing great, and everybody else's company's not. And I'm going to win this. And then everybody started shorting me, and then I lost. I'm like, oh.
What is your private Twitter account, Raymond?
My private, not my
your
not
personal
my company.
ones.
My personal one is at Raymond Chandler.
Okay, just that's it. You got Raymond Chandler.
I got Raymond Chandler.
And it's parallel games. My favorite vocabulary word from 6th grade.
Games.
2 L's and then 1 L.
And then it's at Parallel Spiel for.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Parallel Spiel without the. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Which translates to parallel game.
Yeah.
Yes. What? Just one. The singular.
Just one parallel game.
Well, at this point, so did Parallel Spiel? Is it called Parallel Spiel or Parallel? I guess I have it here. It's called Parallel Games, right? But your Twitter handle is.
It's Parallel Games, but we're still trying to figure out like what's the right name for the company, because there's a company called Parallel. There's a company called Parallel Games that's in Toronto or something. There's a registered corporation in Delaware that's called Parallel Games, but it's out of business. So it's like there's like we're not like the first people to be like, oh, that's a great name for a company. But Parallel Spiele is not taken. So we could be known as Parallel Spiele, LLC or incorporated or whatever, and that would be fine. And then we probably just call ourselves Parallel or whatever. We got to figure out what the trademark is. So that's why it's kind of ambiguous at the moment. And then hopefully we don't get a cease and desist letter anytime soon. But if we do, we'll react to it and we'll do what we need to do. Hence my advice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Earlier.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, you wait until the cease and desist letter. For me, I guess I got a little jumpy on it. I also got my dad's a lawyer, and he is extremely like. He's one of those like cover your back type of guys. Like, you know, he was like, wear the helmet to the chess tournament type of dads.
Right.
So
wear the helmet to the chess tournament. I haven't heard that. That's good. I like it.
Yeah, it's ripped off. It's from the movie A Mighty Wind. If you ever like those Christopher Guest like Spinal Tap movies, it's a reference. So
A Mighty Wind. That is totally going on my list of movies that sound way better if you think about pooping when you say the title.
Oh, you mean the list that you started after A Foul Wind was what Cole Worley wanted to call an infamous traffic?
Should have been the name.
Yes, A Foul Wind, because that's the closest approximation to that game I can think of.
Oh God.
I did tweet about it here, and I'll go ahead and share the link here. I don't know. My connection speed here in the new, since my wife and I have moved, is not always the best. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop a link here to you guys in case you guys wanted to tell me if, especially Andy, if you could tell me if somebody asks a question, we could field questions while we're going. I mean, obviously we're not going to interrupt the episode, but like if we have time, we can answer questions.
Okay.
Yep, I'll watch chat.
Cool. Appreciate it. Because I'm going to go ahead and, let's see. I guess I can just turn down the volume there. And anyway, all right, guys. I think we're going to go ahead and get this episode started. Oh, by the way, Andy, I kind of shifted a little bit. The topic here, I thought we could talk a little bit about games that are kind of like hybrids. So hybrid games that are between categories of, I guess labels, because everybody loves labels.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a wide enough topic where you'd have some comments about it?
Sure.
Okay, sweet. And I figured that would work perfect for the type of game that Ray's designed here. Obviously, you have a previous design, Ray. Was that also released through Parallel Games?
No, that one went through Artana.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that here. I mean, we can talk about Bio here once we actually press the record button, because that'll be one of the first things that I'm going to ask you about. Okay. When we do introductions, I'll go ahead and I'll be like, I'm the host, Joe Salen, joined by, and then Andy's going to say his name, and then I'm going to say, and our special guest host and designer, and I'll leave you a moment to say your own name.
Okay.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm your host, Joe Salen, and I'm joined tonight by
Andrew Dennison.
And our special designer host and, special designer host extraordinaire, and his name is?
Raymond Chandler.
And just so you know, we're just gonna go with it. At this point, it's already been broadcast live on YouTube.
Absolutely. You just got to roll with it, man. You just got to keep it going.
It
was totally planned.
It was totally planned. Like a terrible transition was planned because that's what I'm known for here. Anyway, if we could find a better host, well, I guess I'd be out of a job. So I just turned into like one of the contributors.
Wait, no.
Anyway, we're going to talk to you guys about board games here, as we do on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. First, we will review games. Then we will talk about a topic in the hobby. We're going to talk about hybrid games, which applies to at least one of Raymond's designs as in his work as a board game designer. We're going to hype games on our way out the door. If you're joining us for the very first time, welcome. You can catch us on Twitter at GoodBoardUgly. You can find us on Board Game Geek. We have a Board Game Geek Guild. It's number 2173 if you just search for The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. We're all subscribed to that. Any of the co-hosts are going to be able to immediately answer any of your questions. And if you're interested in participating in the community, you can find us there. Anyway, Ray, it's great to have you on, man. It was awesome to meet you because we've only known each other here for I guess less than a week. But I just met Ray when I was at Origins Game Fair. And Ray, you're kind of a local there, right?
Yeah. I'm in Columbus. I have the lucky ability to be right next to Origins, and then Gen Con is just like an hour and a half drive away, and then we have, the Columbus Area Board Game Society here. I mean, it's a great place to be. I love Columbus. Yeah.
Oh, it is really a wonderful place to be. It was one of those Origins for me was my first ever convention experience. And I went out there, and I was really new, and I still got to play just a whole ton of games. But it is a little bit farther from where we're at in Central Iowa, and I was like, I'll come again if the situation arises. And man, am I glad that I did, because I really think other board game conventions are a lot about the spectacle of the hobby and all the new releases and the hotness. And I think Origins is a time when friends get together and they play games that are not just the new hotness. I feel like BGG-Con's a great convention, but people are playing all the new stuff from Essen. Here at Origins, I was able to get a lot of plays in of classic games, and I was able to meet with you and get a play of your big release prototype that won't be ready for at least another year, right?
Yeah. It's going to be on Kickstarter in May next year, and then I think we're targeting like a Gen Con release right after that.
And that would be the game is called City of Big Shoulders, and I think I'm getting all the articles there, right? It's just City of Big Shoulders, not City of the.
It's City of the Big Shoulders.
Okay, City of the Big Shoulders, and it is a game that's looking to marry together the 18xx genre with Euro game design, so like resource management and I guess like worker placement, right?
It's got a lot of Euro in it. So you definitely have worker placement going on. You definitely have some resource management going on. You have an engine building, so there are separate like little player. I mean, they're company charters, but you're assigning workers and you're turning resources into goods, and so it fits that Euro style really well. But we also have an 18xx style stock track.
Yes, that's right. And so thus, it's a hybrid game, which is one of the reasons we're going to discuss hybrid games here after we get done reviewing games. So, Raymond, you might notice that I just recently changed. Oh, by the way, our listeners are used to having Trent on the episode, and he was here. He was ready to go, and he just had an emergency pull him out. So he's assured me everything is fine, but I had to do a little bit of 180 on what I was actually going to review. So you'll hear that review later. It rhymes with Schmintzes of the Schmena Schmantz. Anyway, I'm really excited to review that game. But for now, since Trent's not here, and I really wanted to be on the podcast with Trent to talk about that, I'm going to talk about a game that I got to play with you, Ray, and not the game that you've designed. We're going to talk more about that when we open up to our topic. But and I'll start with this. At Origins, there was just like a little bit of time. I had all the time in the world, but you had a very limited amount of time. And I was like, you know what? It was really fun playing with you earlier. And got my brother, got another friend I had along there, and we were just like, what game? And I asked you specifically, Ray, because you kind of remind me of Andy in a way. By the way, hi Andy.
Yo.
Hi Andy.
you remind me of Andy because I could tell like you have a very like specific idea of what you're looking for in games. And you can almost tell by looking at a game whether or not it's going to interest you or not. So I was like, I wonder what this guy plays when he only has an hour long. And I've been setting up this for forever, but that's because I want this to drop like a bomb. Ray, what was the game that we played together?
It was Bruges.
It was Bruges. That's right, Andy. It was a Feld game. Not everybody takes a crap on Feld all the time.
Yeah, no, I really like Bruges. Like, Bruges is a huge hit at Cabs. We play it all the time.
Oh, I can tell that copy looks like it's been used like crazy.
Yeah, it's a bit brutal.
Yeah. So we jumped into this game of Bruges. I want to say everybody at the table had played it before, even my little brother, who I guess I played it before like about a year or so ago with him. Anyway, in Bruges, it's a Stefan Feld game, so very point salad-ish, I suppose. Really, like, the main thing that this game incorporates is multi-use cards. And your cards all have a special ability on them, but they can be used like one of 5 different things. You can try to get money. You can get workers. You can turn them into a house in which you would house your cards. You need workers to build your house. And then you could also, of course, just play it for the card effect, which these cards, there's like 170 different cards, 150 something different cards in the base game.
Yeah,
and they've added the expansion. And I mean, like, these cards all do different things. They do things from like you put them down and they could interact with other players. And lo and behold, that was what I was drawing. I promise you, Ray, that was what I was drawing. It was not just like I looked for
the purple where like the purple threat that you gave to everybody. And everybody was like, oh,
oh, it was so perfect. Everybody. So the way that the game works, it has like that sort of punishment element that a lot of Feld games have, where if you ever take 3 disaster tokens, they're shaped like kind of like a section of a peace sign, and they'll go together in thirds. If you ever make a full circle, that means you're going to end up losing something. So you might lose points, you might lose workers. Anyway, it's just like that sort of threat. And there's 2 ways that you can take these disaster tokens. You can either, at the beginning of the round, a whole bunch of dice are rolled. Each of them correspond to one of the colors in the game. And so if there's high numbers rolled on those dice, 5s and 6s, will cause you to take a disaster token of the specific color-coded type. But I found this awesome ability where I could place a worker on one of my mean cards and give everybody, but me, a purple disaster token. And I found the perfect time when everybody else at the table was sitting there with 2 out of 3.
I think, honestly, you got a little lucky because we got like 2 purple like 5s and 6s the first 2 rounds, and you're like, oh, guys, by the way, I just drew this card. You all lost 3 points. Like, I don't think anyone got out of that at all.
No,
like,
you guys all
it came out of nowhere. We were like, oh, Joe's having a good time. We're all having a great time. No, everyone loses 3 points.
It was pretty legit. But the thing is, like, I'm laughing about it in very just how like perfect it was. It was just like one of those like, hey guys, what's this card do? Oh, it screws you guys? Sorry. Very much so.
Wait, hold on. I gotta stop you for a second. The deep end just called me out and said that I am bad at 1880.
Oh, is this oh my goodness.
Joe Wiggins is on.
Joe's on.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Feld is a designer who makes games that people play. Hashtag facts. I don't know if I'm reading that the right way. All right, address the 1880.
Address the 1880. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I don't actually think I did that bad when we played 1880. I played 1880 with Joe. So occasionally, I mean, I think Joe lives up in Akron. We got a group of friends that we meet together and we play games with from time to time. And my problem with XX in general is I'm really bad at the end game. Like, I still haven't figured that piece out. And I thought for a while while we were playing 1880, like the first half of it, I'm like, oh man, I'm rocking this. I'm doing great. And then I just suddenly like petered out like I do like a lot of times. No, who really didn't do well in 1880 was Tony. I think Tony had a really bad time.
He was such a sweet guy, by the way. I got a chance to meet a lot of people for the first time. Tony seems so sweet. He's working at the Capstone booth. And yeah, when I saw Tony and shook his hand, I couldn't stop thinking that like every time I hear Andy talk about these 18xx games, he's like, poor Tony. Tony's just he's about to go bankrupt.
Tony is great though. I mean, everybody loves him.
He really is.
Oh, he's such a sweet guy.
Tony got really shafted. So like, if anybody has played 1880, like there's Beijing, and he starts. I want to say it was a JHU or something like that. And there's a single city track that comes out of that. And I think our friend Tim tokened it, like right after he started the company, even before he bought a train, tokened his only way out of the city. So he would have to run. There's nothing he could do. Like, he couldn't run between two cities. And what's so bad about that is Tony's like, all right, I'm just going to manage. And like finally we get to greens and he's able to upgrade out. And so he then starts, I don't know if it was the checker or something else towards the bottom of the board. And right after he does that, Tim does the exact same thing and tokens him out again. It was hilarious. And at the same time, it was like, Tim, man, like you got to go after the leader. And of course, I'm kind of pointing at Joe. I'm like, go after that guy. Like, it's like, I got to do it. I'm like,
It was it was like Tony just handed him a peach and he had no choice.
Oh man, that was a good game. I like that game. Anyway, sorry. Side note, 1880. Good point. Back to Bruges and Origins.
Yeah. Is that what we were talking about? Okay. So yeah, Bruges. So my thinking here on Bruges, my overall opinion is that this game has all the different features that make me think like, oh, that's a nifty little design. It's very clever. It all interlocks in very interesting ways. Ultimately, you are at the mercy of cards you draw and dice that are rolled. And it feels like you'll be just stuck there without any money. Like invariably, everybody ends up in a position in the game where they're down to zero money. It just seems to happen. Because some of the guys you buy are so expensive. And or you might not see any expensive guys because most of the expensive guys are like incredibly powerful abilities if played early, or they're going to be like good scoring. Anyway, I just get that feeling like in the early game, I had all these 12 costers in my hand, which are impossible to play without bankrupting yourself. And if you get bankrupt, like I was saying, you're at the mercy of what dice is rolled in the colors of cards that you have. There's randomness when you're drawing cards. You don't even know what colors you're going to get. There's randomness in terms of the dice that are rolled every round to give you the threat tokens and determine how much money you can get. There is just randomness, and there's all these different cards. And had I drawn in that last round, like I was playing all these underworld cards. That was all the mean ones I was playing. Like it wasn't I played a lot of mean cards in that game. It was what I was drawing. But like in the last round, if I had drawn like a 12 cost guy that gave me 2 points for every underworld guy, that would have been like 14 points. And that would have been just crazy. That one play would have been worth like 3 points for him, and then I had like 5 other guys plus him. It was a huge thing, and I was like, man, I just don't like that much of my game to rest on things that I'm not going to have any knowledge of until that specific round. At the same time, it plays really quickly, relatively. I mean, we're talking like an hour. People know what they're doing. You could probably get it maybe less than that. And there is some interesting decisions you get to make. but ultimately, when am I going to reach for this? Well, only when I'm really pressed for time. It's really clever. Feld is a designer that makes mechanisms that I love to play around with, but it's not one of those evergreens for me. It's not one that I'm even going to seek out to add to my collection. It's one that I'm going to play with somebody who's enthusiastic about it, somebody who's interested in seeing those game mechanisms. Probably something I could get my wife to play. It's a lighter Feld. It's got an interesting theme. But yeah, what do you have to say, Ray?
So one of the things I love about Feld, so I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of games. I like all kinds of games. Like I like deep strategy games. I like light games. I like some casual games. I even play Ticket to Ride from time to time. The thing about Feld is it's all about randomness, and he hides it. He finds a way to obscure the randomness of the game and try to balance the natural randomness of dice or of card draw in a way that kind of mitigates the randomness but not completely eliminates it. And so the thing I love about Feld is it's a lot of times it's like making the best of a bad situation. And at the same time, in a lot of games, you might be doing really well 2 or 3 rounds, and then the 4th round comes and you're just hosed. You're completely now you're in the dirt, you're in the mud, you gotta shovel your way out of it to try to figure out how do you repair the thing that you kind of lost. And I like that. I like that sort of like, hey, that engine you built, here's a wrench in it. Like, go figure it out. And I think it's important, like when you sit down to a Feld game, to understand that about Feld. Like you're getting into a game that's going to have randomness in it. It's not going to be like super deep strategy. On the other hand, I love games like Le Havre, right? That is all 100%. I mean, it's 100% Euro, no randomness. It's all based on what other players did. Same thing with like 1880. I love that. So like I think it's important, like if somebody's like trying to experiment with Feld games, to kind of go into it with that mentality of like a lot of his games are more tactics than they are strategy. Like, given your situation right now, what is the best thing you can do to maximize your odds at winning the game? I love that.
I agree with you 100%, and I think that Joe here, Joe Wiggins, has brought up a good point that I think Macau is one that's kind of like that in a lot of ways. Like the dice rolls in Macau are one of the things that really turns me off about it because it's a longer one.
Right.
And I agree that it's about that randomness, but man, you can end up getting a dice roll in Macau that just like so hoses you for what is your options of what you can actually do. And there's a few other things that make me not quite like it, but let's put it like this. If I've got if I have to choose a Feld game that's about rolling a handful of dice, I would reach for Bruges much quicker than I'd reach for Macau. It just, to me, it has a lot more, just like, it has a lot of distractions in it that keep me from really focusing on that randomness so much. I really think, like you said, it's masked in just the sheer amount of randomness is almost what's masking the randomness here.
Right. It's like you said, I already have randomness. How do I balance this? Add more randomness.
Yeah, it's lower. These cards don't feel balanced. It's fine. The dice are rolled anyway. And you don't even know what cards you're going to get. You're getting the colors of them. So, yeah, when you're drawing the cards, it's interesting. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of interesting interlocking mechanisms. If any of that stuff sounds entertaining to you, if you're looking for a lighter Feld game, or if you're just, I mean, it is very much feels like a classic Feld, but just maybe not the best Feld for me.
What is the best Feld for you?
I mean, for me, it's I got to go with like the crowd pleaser. I got to go with Castles of Burgundy. It's
I have to agree. I mean, I like Castles of Burgundy a lot more than Bruges as well.
That's one I will play. Normally, I'm not a big Feld fan, but that's one I'll play pretty much any time.
And it feels entirely Feld. Like, to me, there's nothing about Castles of Burgundy that feels like distinctly unfeld, like, oh, this is the least Feld game. No. I think Castles of Burgundy is my favorite. I would also respect like Trajan, but just for me, Trajan, I don't know. It feels just a little bit more disconnected, and it's more puzzly. I would say probably less random, though it does have a few flips that are pretty painful in those, like in the need, the desires of the people, or whatever. But I'm gonna have to go with Castle of Burgundy still pretty firmly on that. So that is my review and some comments there about Bruges. Let's go ahead and down the line here. we're gonna hear from. We'll get Ray. We'll go to you here first, since I figured during our topic we might be hearing quite a bit of you, and want to make sure your voice is rested just a bit. So, tell us a little bit about the big release from the team behind Trickerion, the new one.
Oh yeah, Anachrony, man, I love Anachrony. I've been playing it. So Mind Clash has consistently been impressing me. Like Trickerion was amazing. It was a little clunky in some parts, I thought, but I thought overall like the theme and the mechanics meshed really well together. And so when they released Anachrony on Kickstarter, I backed it on a whim, but honestly it wasn't, because it's beautiful. And I got it, and I read over the rulebook. I'm like, oh, this is a really interesting mechanic with the timeline and everything. And I played it, and it plays like a dream. The really cool thing about Anachrony, it's your standard worker placement game, right? So you're placing out, you have workers that you have to kind of power up into exosuits, and then you can go out into this capital city to to try to do different things, or they can go out in the wilderness. And there are a couple like modules and expansions that do other things as well. But you have a worker and you have resource management. But the thing that really sells Anachrony for me is the timeline mechanic. And so let me back up for a second. So the whole story about Anachrony, there are these 4 paths. There's this huge like sort of apocalyptic event that happens. And I'm not talking about the impact, but if you read like the storybook and like, the history and the world building they've done, there's like this big apocalyptic thing, and then humanity kind of splits apart, and then slowly it starts coalescing back together. And so you end up with like the Path to Salvation, which is this group of people who go underground. You've got the Path to Dominance, which I think goes out to sea. You've got the Path of Harmony, which finds this thing called the Wellspring. So like it's got a great world to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, totally. Like they did a good job with the backstory, like background of it.
And then all the 4 paths come together, and they create like a world council, and there's a capital city. And that capital city is like to create a new birth of the Earth. And so you pay when you set up the game there, you set up 4 timeline tiles, and then right after that you set up an impact tile where an asteroid hits Earth, right? And so the story is like, an asteroid hits Earth, and a bunch of people die. Like it's the end of humanity. Like the paths are all broken up again. How are we going to survive? We're already pretty thinned out, and but then a group of like researchers finds out that, oh, the impact crater is filled with these things called neutronium, and that turns out to be the secret of time travel. And so now that we know the secret of time travel, we can go back and prevent the impact from occurring, or if it does occur, we can also try to evacuate the capital city to our path. And so the story is like each player is playing one of these separate paths, and you're trying to get the most of the capital city into your path, because you want your path to be the dominant path. But the cool thing is, each one of these like timeline eras, you are requesting resources from the future. So like in era 1, you might be like, well, I need an additional exosuit so I can take an additional action. So I'm going to warp in an exosuit from the future. And you place one of these timeline tiles on the timeline track, and you get your exosuit, right? You have an exosuit, now you have everything you want. You can you can request in resources, you can request in different workers, or whatever you want. But the trick is, you got to pay it back. And if you don't, you'll build up paradoxes, and eventually that'll create an anomaly, which then, to close the anomaly, you've got to kill, somebody has to die to like fix the timeline, to repair that anomaly on your board. And I love that mechanic, because in essence, the thing I love about it is it's just a fancy loan system. It's a really fancy loan system that meshes with theme. But if you think really hard about it, it also is legitimate time travel. Like you're legitimately time traveling while you play the game, because you legitimately are requesting resources from your future self that you also legitimately have to spend before the end of the game to return it to the past you that just requested the resource, so that you can prevent like it blows my mind that it's that sort of thing. I had the same sort of realization at like Origins 3 or 4 years ago when I sat down and played Mice and Mystics, and I looked at the miniatures, and I realized they weren't miniatures. Right? You look at like Mice and Mystics, you look at like, oh, it's a giant centipede. Well, not really. That's a life-size centipede. That's the actual size of the thing. It's the same sort of thing when you're playing with this timeline track that you're like, I'm actually warping in stuff from the future self. So I love that about the game. I think it's a genius, and I think and that alone could sell it, but then it's just such a great game after that, right? Like you've got resource management, you're trying to spend, you've got worker management, you're trying to make sure they stay awake, like you're spending them to perform different actions, you're rebuilding your own paths kind of infrastructure. So like you can build buildings that help you travel back in time, or help you convert water, or help you do all kinds of stuff. And I say every time I played it, I've had a lot of fun. That said, for anyone who hasn't played Anachrony, who like goes out and buys it or gets a copy, and you set it up and you want to play with everything all at once, don't do that. And I think even in the rule book, it calls it out. You should play with one module or the other, but not both. And the reason for that is that one module is incredibly unbalanced from the other, and that's the adventure module, which I rather play with the Doomsday module, which affects whether that impact tile moves left or right, than I would the adventure module, because it seems like, at least with the groups that I'm playing with, everybody kind of digs into those adventure cards because they're really, really, really good. Like, they're really powerful. But if you try to do both of them, it doesn't really work. Like, you got to do one or the other.
Yeah, because setting yourself for the adventures just it takes a lot to set up yourself for that, and that's all you're going to want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry, I geeked out.
No, it was cool, man. I was listening to the whole thing. I would like though to give just a second here to update on what, because I am able to actually load this on my screen here. It looks like Joe Wiggins thinks the best Feld game is Bora Bora. That was something I read, and that's interesting. I've played Bora Bora once or twice. Thought it was really cool. It's, people get really frustrated playing Bora Bora, like uncharacteristically mad for a Feld game just because of how easy you get cut off. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. That means like it's just one that I like to play with more experienced people. But I can totally see why you like that. And then he says he loves Mind Clash as well.
Joe, you and I need to play Bora Bora then, because I actually bought Bora Bora, and I brought it to Cabs, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, and I can never get anybody to play it. So since you love it, let's sit down and play it sometime.
Yeah, you guys have fun with that. I'd like to play more Bora Bora. We'll see. I actually do own it, I think. So anyway, the other thing was the new game coming from this group looks really cool. That the one that's going to be on Kickstarter here, Cerebria, is like a trip inside the mind. It looks like Inception, kind of. Like they tackle the theme of Inception.
I didn't really get that. So I saw the I thought it was more about like how to like the story of the brain. Like, how does the brain process information? Oh. So I almost saw it like Inside, like what's that Pixar movie? Was it?
Oh, yeah, Inside Out. Love that.
Inside Out. So but I don't know, because I've only seen the artwork for it, and it is beautiful. Like
no, you're right.
This is who's the big artist there? Velos? Is that her name? I'm sorry if I'm getting it wrong.
Artist is Velo Farkas, it looks like.
Yes. She is amazing. I love her artwork, and I can't wait to see how Cerebria turns out. Like, it looks really good.
So where would you put, have you played Trickerion? The other big release? You have?
Yeah.
Where would you put Anachrony together with Trickerion?
I would, man, that's really hard for me. I like Anachrony a little bit better, but that might be because it's new to me. Trickerion I love because it's Magic, and I love Magic. I love everything about Magic and sleight of hand, and I thought they did really good to that theme. Like they were really true to it, and they were true to the whole like almost like the illusionists on stage battling it out to try to figure out. I love the theme of it. For me, Tricarian's like fatal flaw is the trick system in the performance system at the end is really kind of involved. And I think it confuses a lot of new players who play it. Once you get into it and you're like, oh, I see how the links work and I see how all these rewards work, it's not so bad, but it's still like, part of me thinks maybe there could have been a little bit more development on that to streamline that a bit.
What does Andy think about Streamlined? Let's hear it, Andy.
What?
Streamlined.
Streamline? Nah, don't.
Sorry, yeah. No, I see. That's usually the main thing that people bring up as a complaint in Tricarion is those tricks. But I'm going to go ahead and go with Joe Wiggins here. I like Tricarion a little bit. I really like Tricarion a lot, and I think Tricarion has just got the more like staying power for me. I'm kind of where you are a little bit right now, Ray, because I understand like Anachrony's got this really cool world, and I still feel like I'm much more engrossed in the world of Tricarion of Anachrony than I am in Tricarion. But I think that as far as game mechanisms go, I think Tricarion's got the edge on Anachrony, because when I think about it, like Tricarion has this sort of like you've got all these elements that you put together for a trick, you try to dovetail them into more complex tricks that are somehow using your previously acquired components to your tricks. And I find that fulfills the same sort of like, it scratches an itch that Colosseum did. And I don't see many other games that do that, where like you kind of have the, like when you use your resources, you're not really using them per se. You're just, like you're just taking advantage of them and they don't go away. You've got the supply of them. And I really like seeing how that expands throughout the game. And I think it gives a backbone of strategy to it. I think personally that the way the trick system works is one of the most like it's just like, to me, it's really cool when you think about building a trick where you sort of like, or building a show where the tricks like segue into each other is what you're getting rewarded for. And to me, very, very interesting. And I feel like that abstraction is done in a really interesting way. And the components also work in a really interesting way. For me, like Tricarion still has this really high opinion in my mind. Anachrony is still pretty high up right now, but I think that's because it's new. I think that's like something that's going to wear a little bit, because I like the way that it does feel like time travel. But I feel like once you're sort of like getting over this sort of like, mind blown feeling of like, oh man, it's time travel, I think that it starts to become more like just like, well, I just get this resource now, and then I've got this sort of plan that I've done before of how to get it back. And I think games kind of start to play out a little bit similar.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think Tricarion is the heavier of the two, for sure. Like it feels to me like Tricarion's a game. Like if you like heavy games, you like thinky games, you like games where you can plan, and then that has whatever you start with kind of has consequences as you go. Like Tricarion fits that very well, whereas Anachrony is like, I just want to build an engine and try to maximize my points, and it's like Anachrony is a Euro, right? And I like what Joe says. He's like, he says here it's a worker placement game with thematic loans, and that's very true. I happen to like the theme a lot, and I happen to like the loans a lot, but I think that's true. I think if you here's what I would say for anyone who's listening, that if you're trying to decide between Tricarion and Anachrony, if you like really heavy thinky games with a little bit of worker placement to it, Tricarion's your pick. If you like Euro resource management games,
also with worker placement,
and I think Anachrony's your pick. I think that's kind of like the division line between like which one you're going to like better. But that said, like get them both. Like they're both really good.
They're very great productions, very well run Kickstarters. Like I'll totally be behind. I'll be following Cerebria when it comes out.
Yeah, me too.
All right, well, that's Anachrony and also a little bit into just Mind Class games in general. But let's go ahead and finish strong with an 18xx game from, well, who else would be talking about an 18xx game?
The Cool Kids Table.
Yeah, the Cool Kids Table.
Anyway, I'm going to give some kind of initial thoughts on this because I'm hoping to get more plays of it, and I wouldn't put it enough at that I could give a real deep review. But I've been able to now get 2 plays of 1822, which just won the Golden Elephant Award there at HeavyCon, and I think well-deservingly so after having played it a couple times. So it's got the normal 18xx stuff, stocks and all that kind of thing. The thing that makes this one, I think, especially interesting is I've never had an 18xx before give me this much candy to play with. Like every round, there's just so many things up for auction, and that's also unique in that most 18xx games start out with this really interesting auction, and then once you're done, like there's no more auctions in the rest of the game. This one, there's auctions through a good chunk of the game. There's going to be minor companies for auction. There's going to be private companies for auction. There's going to be concessions that you need to buy in order to have the rights to start major companies later on down the line. So this one has quite a bit going on. It's not one I would recommend for a first 18xx experience, even though it won the Golden Elephant Award. It's not even one I think I would recommend for even maybe a fifth. But if you've played quite a few of them, I think you're going to find a light. Basically, whatever you love about 18xx, you're going to be able to find it here to one degree or another. And I don't think I've ever played one before where I felt very in control of my destiny through the game, in that if I want to play a run good kind of companies game, I can kind of do that. If I want to do some stock shenanigans, I can kind of do that. If I want to do mergers, I can kind of do that. And so it gives you all of these options to mess around with. Now, that's both a plus and a danger, because if you get distracted by these options, like, oh, look at that. Oh, that's so awesome looking. And then you buy it, and then you realize, wait, that doesn't like synergize at all with what I'm doing. Like that is going to wreck you later on. The game's very much about stay on target. So find the minors, the privates, and the majors that are going to synergize well with each other to actually catapult you to the head of the game. The thing that can get very rough in this one too is that they have a loan system. So you don't really go bankrupt. You just take out a loan, and it's compounded at 50% interest. So, you don't
want to take it.
Yeah, you don't want to take it. And the worst part, if you can't pay it off next stock round, they add on another 50% interest. So it's an especially cruel game, because if you really bottom out, you don't even get to go watch TV. You just have to sit there and watch, you pull in no money for the end score of the game. Honestly, though, unless you really screw up your plan, and like I haven't had to take any loans in the game yet. There was my first play of it. I don't know how I got second place, and I don't know how I avoided loans, because I played it at HeavyCon with Tony Fryer there, and basically halfway through the game, he's like, yeah, and we see Andy ignored all of my advice about not starting a lot of minor companies when you're new. And then I just kind of looked down and went, oh, crap. And so I played probably a little over 40 18xx games now, and I had to use all of that experience to avoid taking loans, but I managed to do it. And anyway, I can see why this one won the Golden Elephant. It really is a very unique 18xx game. Out of every 18xx game I've played so far, I think this one probably has the most replay potential out of any of them, because the companies come out at random order. Some companies are really good at the beginning. Some are really awesome near the end. That ability to auction them, to fight over them, is going to make that play out a little bit differently. We learned in our second play that spending too much money in the initial auction because you think you have to have it to start is not a great plan either. So anyway, 1822. I'm really looking forward to some more plays of this game. It is a little bit on the longer side. I think at HeavyCon we got it done in 6 hours. Playing with a little less experienced 18xx players recently, I think we did it in 8. I expect that once your group gets it down, about 6 hours is probably about right for this one. But it's really neat. The most the biggest thing most people do is they look at the board and think this is going to be like an 18OE monstrosity because the board's big, but it really fills up fast. So anyway, if you really like the auction component of 18XX, 1822 is the way to go, hands down. The only thing we've kind of agreed on amongst the different people I play 18XX with is we probably won't play this one online just because resolving all of those auctions would take forever. But across the table on a good Saturday or something, oh yeah, hands down, I would play this anytime I could.
I have a couple things to add to that. I've gotten in, I think maybe 10 plays of 22 so far. I love it. I think it's going to. I agree 100% that it's going Elephant Award was 100% earned. If you're looking into if you don't like token heavy XX games, I think this is your game. Like the thing about 1822 that I really like is it's kind of low conflict between players. Like you generally want to work with each other on things, and obviously you want to make sure that you kind of have your spot and can make your runs, but at the same time, it's not like in 46 where tokens are dropping constantly, or in it feels more 61-ish to me, where everybody's like, just trying to kind of to make it work. And the other thing that I really like about it is the stressing. I can't stress enough the replayability. Like you cannot get a lot of XX games. You can kind of get in a situation where there's an optimal play. Like if you always manage to start this company in this position, you have a pretty solid chance of winning. In 22, you don't have that because you don't know if you're going to get the company when you expect to get the company. And even though you can look through the concessions and you can look through all of the privates that are coming up, it's really hard to plan, what money you're going to have available versus what money you're not going to have available. And the random order in which those come out and become available make it so that it's a really hard, you know what it is? A lot of XX games I feel have a solvable component to it. Like tic-tac-toe is a solvable game. Like some XX games have that sort of like solvable solid strategy, where like in 22, I don't know if that's even possible. Like it feels like, to me, it feels like, it's completely different play every time.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And honestly, I know that my opinion on 18XX is probably not even worth sharing, but I would say this, that the elements that I really enjoyed in my 18XX experience, like in 1846, were generally like the decisions I was making when I was trying to draft my companies at the beginning, and then for the first 2/3 of the game, as those decisions, as I was able to try to make, the best out of what decisions were there. It sounds to me like 1822 is kind of like presenting you with those decisions consistently throughout the game, right? Because it sounds like some things are kind of coming out later on. Is that am I hearing that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair assessment.
There's offers pretty much every round until everything is bought out. But basically, at the start of the game, there'll be 4 minors, 3 privates, and I believe 3 concessions to offer for the auction. And then those just keep refilling until kind of all of them have been played out. In the second play, the only thing that really didn't get fought over there was a few minor companies in the end game where everyone's like, it's not worth starting a minor company at this point. So those just kind of kept dying off. But I would say for the first few ORs, yeah, there was some pretty aggressive bidding, trying to get the privates you wanted to synergize with the minors you wanted, with the concessions you wanted. So I would say that component of it does carry through much more of the game. At least half to probably 60% of it, you're going to be doing things like that.
I would say in general, I would be great with 18XX games if I could just get some sort of autopilot to take over for me at about the time that you're talking about that 60%, 70% point. Because that's usually, especially like in the last couple of rounds when you're just kind of adding up what stuff you already get, like it is when I really start to lose my interest and I start to sour on the experience in general, whether or not I actually prefer that particular 18XX game. It sounds to me, though, just in general, like there's enough design here to where it's giving, like I feel to me, like this is starting to modernize the 18XX design a little bit. Like because what you mentioned, Ray, these games feel kind of solvable. It feels like if you've played it a couple of times, you've seen a successful way to run a specific private into a major based on, or a minor based on it starting, whatever games call, whatever things. There's different ones in different places. But it sounds like, there's kind of like a specific, really strong strategy. And of course, the game is made with interaction and ways to be able to jump on and jump off of people if you ever think something's imbalanced. But like, to me, it seems like this game system is a lot less likely to get to the point where that's even a problem.
Yeah, I think I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I think that, but I think 22 solves that really well because of the way the stocks come out. Like and there is definitely some like crucial, really powerful moves you can make in 22. For example, buying the 2 train, and then
the 2 permanent train.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing is so sweet.
Yeah, it's like it's like starting. What's the rocket in 80. Right, in 1880, it's like, oh, I get a run my first turn. That's amazing. So there are things like that you can plan out, but it's like it's not one strategy. Like, oh, I'm going to start these 2 or these 3 specific companies, and I know it's going to be super powerful. There's a couple games, I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, where it's like, oh, if you start that company, then you're doing pretty good. Like even thinking about like 1830, what's the one that's in New York, the black company?
New York Central.
Yeah, New York Central. You start the New York Central and you relay the right
I just knew that trivia question. Joe Wiggins was calling me a summer child on the YouTube thing. I just have to point out it was me that knew that trivia.
Sweet Summer Child?
Yes, yeah. that was his that was me. I'm a sweet summer child.
Yeah.
Anyway. Joe, I would agree. I don't think 1830 is necessarily solved, but I think for sure there are well-known strategies that you can start with and have a really, really good shot at winning. Yeah. Versus like,
I don't think anybody's trying to say it is solvable. It's just that it feels like if you come into it with knowledge of how a specific company is made to work, you're going to be at an inherent advantage. And you're going to, and even if somebody else comes in, even if you find, a successful strategy for yourself, like you kind of have to know the ways to interact with other players. And I think that that's something that kind of just comes more with playing more games. So not saying that it is solvable.
The thing I came up with 1822, because when we played it the second time, it was Trent and my second play, and we had two people that hadn't played it before. One who had a fair amount of 18xx experience, one that had very little. And the thing about an auction game is that there is kind of that fragility there, in the sense that, if you let someone get away with the 2 permanent train for like $5, you've just handed them a seriously powerful tool. So somebody had created like bidding guides. Not so much that you have to bid this much, but if you let this private go for less than 100, you are basically handing them a giant birthday present they're going to kick your butt with. So
they should almost make like a new edition of the game where that is how much the bidding starts at for these companies.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to do that because other than a couple exceptions, like it's very based on when they become available. Right. Like there are some privates that if they come out in the early game.
Oh, and I'm not talking about 1822. I'm talking about other 18xx games when I say that. Sorry, I've not. Yeah. 22. I have no comment.
Anyway,
about it.
But I can see why this one won the Golden Elephant Award. It's really in the 18xx community. This is a really good standout game.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and move into talking about, I think we almost touched on something that works for a good segue here, Ray, and that is that, one of the elements in 18xx games that can make them a tough nut to crack is that you've got a lot of setup that happens before you really start to see how the game is going to work. So your first game very frequently is like, let's get all this stock in these companies, and you don't really always know how this company is going to work. On top of that, then you start to run the company, and the very first round, you're not even able to make any money at all. You have to basically just operate without having a train. So I think that you'd mentioned that it's kind of nice to be able to see like there isn't that lag time between when you start a company and when you're able to get it to operate. Does that sound? You'd mentioned that in your discussion of 1822.
Well, yeah, I mean, in 22, it's particularly powerful when you get the two trainer able to start a company and run it your first round because nobody else gets that advantage usually. But I think in general, it's pretty standard to think, oh, you know, the first time I run, I'm going to go back because I don't have a train. But I can see where you're taking this, so I'll let you take that from there.
Well, it's because your game that you've been designing, City of the Big Shoulders, you described as an 18. Just to make it very simple for our audience that's familiar with it, 18 Arkwright.
Yeah.
So
1846 meets Arkwright.
1846 meets Arkwright, and
yeah.
I guess I was even further in jamming those together.
Yeah. So like you know, with City of the Big Shoulders, there was a couple kind of things sort of influencing that. The first is I'm a poetry nerd. Like I love like classic American literature and classic American poetry, and Carl Sandburg is always his poem Chicago has always been a really like resonant poem for me, partly because it's about sort of the American ideal, and at the same time it's sort of you know all about the worker and the working man, and you know how we can build a better society, and you know maybe not such how, but more of like it's really a braggart poem. Like I'm proud of my city.
Yeah, there's a lot of pride in that.
And every now and again, I go back and I reread poems. Like, you know, I'll go back and reread Poe, or I'll go back and reread, you know, Ralph Waldo Emerson, or I'll reread, you know, Sandburg, or I'll reread, you know, a lot of different things. And I think I did one day, and at the same day, or like the next day, I played a game of 1846. And in 1846, the thing about that, everybody wants to get to Chicago because it pays like crazy. You know, everybody's racing to get into that city, and I thought, oh, what's going on in Chicago? And for a while, I've been wanting to think about merging Euro or creating a bridge for Euro gamers to get into 18xx games. And so, you know, I put pen to paper and spent some time coming up with what I thought might be a good game. And on top of that, around the same time, I bought Arkwright. And I'm reading through the Arkwright rulebook, and just light bulbs are going off left and right. I'm like, I can take so much of the things that I like about Arkwright and the things I like about 1846 and the things that I don't like, and remove those and think about how can we reorganize things to make it, you know, wholly tell the story of Chicago during that time period from like 1870 to 1930, and like make the game really fun to play. So that kind of brought about City of the Big Shoulders, which you know, in City of the Big Shoulders, you've got a little bit of Arkwright. You have factories, but factories look a little bit different than they do in Arkwright. Like you don't purchase a specific factory and place it on your thing, and then you're trying to upgrade your factory. And at the same time, you have workers that you're placing, that those workers are kind of predetermined how many you should have. You can automate your workforce that allows you to produce more goods. You got to go buy resources to turn those into goods, and then you're selling different goods to like a static demand track, and then on top of that, it's like, well, I want to introduce 18xx to people who may not otherwise play the 18xx games. I think a lot of the hesitation from a lot of people about trying 18xx is, I don't want to sit down for 6 hours to learn this game. I don't want to dedicate that time, and on top of that, I don't like. Maybe I'm not attracted to the artwork, or maybe, you know, I'm not attracted to the idea of just trains in general. Like I like Euro worker placement games. I don't want to sit down and talk about how I'm playing an accounting game, because that feels like work to me.
Yeah.
Now, me
and even with
personally,
Arkwright, that's kind of what, you know, Arkwright was able to make it look a little better, but a lot of people have called Arkwright's board like spreadsheet the game.
Right, and I like Arkwright. Like I like those heavy games. I play 18xx every week, at least once a week. I love that. But it's like there's this whole other world of heavy games that I think people kind of put blinders on. They're like, you know, there's a hump you have to get over. And so I thought, Well, wouldn't it be great if we had a game where we could put it in front of someone that has played a lot of XX and really would enjoy this? Like they would pull it out, and maybe it's for them. It's the XX filler game. It's the while we're waiting for the other people to arrive, let's play City of the Shoulders.
Yeah, it's only 2 to 3 hours.
Right, it's only 2 to 3 hours. But for people who play Euro, like the only real new thing you have to learn is the 18XX style stock market.
Mm-hmm. And you use a fairly simple version of the 18XX stock market, like kind of more 1846, like you'd mentioned before, as opposed to 1830. Right,
exactly. So, like, it's a single dimensional stock market. You either go back or you go up. You could pay, you could a single jump, double jump, and triple jump based on how much you're paying. And then what you pay is determined by
You can triple jump now?
You can triple jump now. How much you pay is, well, and that's tentative. We're still in development. We're still finalizing things. But the artwork's done. And I'll get back to that in a second. But anyways, depending on how many goods you produce, how many salespeople you have, what the current demand market looks like, kind of contributes to what your payout is. So, if you sell 3 goods for $50 each, that means your company's running for, $115. $150. It's $15 a share, and you pay it out just like you would in an XX game, and then you look at what your share price is and you move up. And then if you withhold, you go back. If you don't pay enough, you stay put. If people sell your shares, you go back. So people get that feel of like XX, and my hope is like people will look at it and go, oh, it's a Euro. It's a really heavy Euro. I can sit down for 2.5 hours and play this, and they fall in love with the stock market mechanic, which for me, I know for a lot of XXers, it's all about building the routes. For me, it's all about the stock market. I love playing the stock game when I'm playing XX games. And I like the train building too. I like the route building as well. But for me, like being able to like look at the market and see what things are selling for and seeing what people are paying and being able to play shenanigans with shares is kind of the selling point for me. And so my hope is like people will play this and they'll be like, oh, I get it. And then they'll go and try 1830, or they'll go and try, maybe not 1830, that's a bad one to start with.
1846.
Try 1846, or they'll go try in 1889, or they'll go try, and then after that they'll start playing 1822, and they'll start trying 18 New York or 18 PA, or 1861, or any of them. Those are my favorite. I'm just listing off my favorite 18XX games right now. And that will give them sort of the I don't know, the drive to enter that world of games that they've kind of blocked themselves off from. So that's my hope with the game. On the like artwork development stuff, I say we're still doing rule changes. The game is like 99% of the way there, but we're just tweaking numbers and like, should this company require this many workers, or should they have one less, or should they have one more? Should they really be spending that much wood? So it's like, it's all of that, and that's because for anyone who's listening, we don't want to release a bad game on Kickstarter. We want our first game to be like really, really, really good, really solid. So even though we feel like we could put it on Kickstarter today, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait a year, and I'm going to really, really develop it out and streamline it and make it sweet, so that when you buy the game, when you decide to invest your money into Parallel Games and the game that we put out, you go, oh, this is a company we can trust. And I'm hoping like people will respond the same way that I've kind of responded to Mind Clash, where I bought like on a whim, I bought Tricarion. I'm like, okay, we'll see if these guys are any good. And then you're like, oh my God, Mind Clash is amazing. I want to buy all of their games from now on until the end of time. And so that's kind of the hope. But yeah, so City of the Big Shoulders. If you like heavy economic Euro games, and you're kind of curious about XX, or you like XX and you want something that is maybe a little bit lighter than 1822, I think it's your kind of game. Or if you're right in that middle and you want to kind of dabble a little bit, it's a good game. I think you guys will really like it. Anyone who's listening, I know plug and all that good stuff, but check us out.
I would say that even if you don't want to wait forever, right now, you actually have a way for people to be able to play the game if they're willing to do a little bit of work in producing it. A
little bit, kind of yes and kind of no. Actually, so being a new company, you know, nobody knows who we are. And so we're hoping as part of that strategy is to say, you know, we're going to have a print and play. And that print and play is always going to be free. It's not pretty. But we're always going to have a print and play available on Board Game Geek. And I think we're going to end up doing that for all of our games, where people can play them early on while they're developing. You think of like Steam Greenlight.
Play like the working prototype. So yeah, no art, just...
Right. And be able to try it out and see if they like it before they even, you know, try to follow us on on Twitter or whatever and subscribe on BGG. They can take it, play it with their friends, play it with their family, and say, is this a game for me? Is this something that I'm going to be interested in? And the other hope there is like people can get involved. Like they can send us feedback. Hey, I played the prototype. I downloaded a Board Game Geek. You know, we had a question about this. This wasn't clear in the rule book. Like. And I think crowdsourcing that in a way, getting that feedback helps us make better games. Mm-hmm. And I really like to see more people doing that, but I think a lot of people like approach that like, oh, is somebody going to steal our game or is it going to take away value? And I think what it does actually is the complete opposite. Like it adds value, it adds community, it builds a better game, and everyone kind of gets a say in how the game is produced, which is awesome. I like that.
Definitely, yeah. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the advantage of that is you can find games where it's glaringly obvious that, you know, even though they say they play tested it 500 times, it was 500 times with the same 5 people.
Right.
And, you know, one of my favorite games is Three Kingdoms Redux, and they did the same thing. They had a print and play freely available for a long time to get feedback. And in the end, it was, when you played that game, it did not seem like, oh yeah, okay, well this was the first game this company did, so you know, well let's give them a little no, this looked like seasoned game designers made this awesome game, and no, it was like the first attempt, but it's as good as somebody's 10th attempt when they've been doing it for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of designers make the mistake of like, or anyone in any company, any sort of entrepreneurial venture, people are afraid like somebody's going to take their idea, or they're afraid of the criticism, or they're afraid of, and it's completely the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at it is like, hey guys, let's work together to make something amazing.
Right.
And you end up with better products. Like Three Kingdoms is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also say that in many ways, Andy, what you've described there with the Three Kingdoms, I know Andy's really kind of in the dark here. Actually, it'd be Ray's who's in the dark here if you're watching us on YouTube. But Andy's in the dark about City of the Big Shoulders. I got a chance to play through most of a game at Origins, and I was just thrilled. What Raymond's saying here, guys, is the real deal. A lot of our listeners here are big 18xx fans, and I'm still getting them off my back for my episode on math and 1846. So the thing is, like, here, guys, we might be able to find, like, this might be the olive branch. So, you know, this might be the sort of, like, the offering that will sort of put me back at peace with you, because in the playing of this game, I just saw the same sort of decisions that I'm looking for from an 18xx experience, but I get that, like, there's very concrete elements to this game that I think is uncharacteristic of that specific genre that I would imagine more from just well-designed, well-researched game. Not to say that 18xx games aren't, but they are very, like, you have to really understand the system, be able to dig deep in those mechanisms to be able to read the theme underneath. Or just, I guess, read the rule book where they describe, or designer diaries where they describe what's happening. Here, like, you can start a company here, and it's called Cracker Jacks. And you're like, hold on. You mean, like, the Cracker Jacks? And it's like, yes, the Cracker Jacks. All the resources in the game represent actual, like, you know, you got your livestock. You've got what metal is one of them, or steel, I guess. And then, like, grain, or what is it? Like,
yes, we have... I think it's wood, livestock, coal, and iron are the 4 resources to try to power your companies, or you're going to turn those resources into good. So like Cracker Jack, for example, like you don't have livestock going into that, but you certainly have wood for the packaging, right, to turn into paper.
Yeah.
And then there are paired with that, there are 4 separate company types. So you have food and dairy, which Cracker Jack is one of them. You have meat packing. You have dry goods and industrial tools, and like hats and everything are all kind of built together, and anything that you would find in a department store, like Sears, for example. And the one that really surprised me when we were researching this, and it totally makes sense in like hindsight, but you would not think this, is shoes. Shoes and leather goods. And it's funny because when we started researching like all of the companies that existed during this time, name brand after name brand kept coming up, that were, Nabisco, Cracker Jacks, NK Fairbank, which is not really name brand anymore, but was.
Spalding.
Spalding, yeah. Quaker
Sporting
Oats.
goods. Mm-hmm.
Armour, which you may not think of being a homemade brand, but have you ever heard of Vienna sausages?
Oh, those are made in my hometown, man. So
you've got that, and I'm looking at like that, and then it's like shoe company. I'm like, what is up with all these shoes? And the reason for that, and one of them is still not really a household brand, but a well-known fancy dress shoe company is Florsheim. They're actually still in business. They're still making shoes. But you're like, what is going on with the shoes? And then you realize, oh, this is the meat packing capital of the world. It's killing lots of cows and lots of pigs, and they have lots of leather.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think still to this day, one of the oldest tanneries in America, one of the few surviving tanneries in America, is still in Chicago, and that's Horween. And they are known for extremely good leather products. So they have like the Chrome Excel product. I do leather working on the site. And they also have, they sell Shell Cordovan, which is actually not cow, it's horse. But they're still in business. It's a family-owned company for like 200 years, that came out of, and they were servicing these shoe companies. So sorry, I geek out about Chicago's history now that I've done all this research, because it's such an everything like you think of as being American, that came from Chicago, almost everything, that during that time period. And a lot of people don't realize this, but Chicago hosted not one, but 2 World's Fairs. Like, it was that awesome of a city.
Yeah,
so when you're
like
playing
the birthplace of American exceptionalism.
Yeah, and you're looking at it like, why is that running for 120? Why is that city worth 120? Well, it's because at that time it was the booming capital, economic capital of the world. Like that was the place to be during that time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know the trivia fact about Chicago's river?
I don't.
They purposely built up the elevation of the river to cause it to flow the opposite direction.
Oh yeah, they reversed the river.
Yeah, so it would wash all their crap down into St. Louis.
That's a fun fact.
Thanks, Andy.
But yeah, so and the other thing that we're going to include this history in the game. So like we were talking about Mind Clash earlier with Anachrony and all the world building and stuff. We're going to do the same sort of thing. We want to teach people not only about like, we want the game to be not purposefully educational, but that sort of thing where like I want people to feel the same passion while they're playing it, and they see, Hart, Schaefer, and Marx, and they what is Hart, Schaefer, and Marx? And then you come to realize, oh, that's H&M, right? That's that company that's been rebranded several times. Or
that's cool though, because that kind of like then you're kind of combining Euro economic and then the historical thematic elements you would associate more with like the war game genre almost.
Right. Yeah.
And even 18xx, Andy, a lot of 18xx games are very historically researched. It's just that the actual route building is up to the players but the cities and whatnot, the starting locations and whatnot are all, and the privates are all very historically accurate.
Yeah, and the values often, like the north of England in 1822 is just poor.
Starts to Chalcedonian.
Yeah.
I would just say, it sounds to me like just a great, you take a love for a specific theme and a designer who's passionate about it. You've got a background in video game design, which I don't even think we mentioned on the recording, but that was in our prior discussions. That's what your degree is in. And then you take, like, you actually play these 18xx games. You're not, just trying to kind of like jump into that market here just because you see it as a potential place, for growth. But and then you take like the way that you've mixed together elements from like what I would think of as Arkwright. But I mean, Arkwright has 4 different companies and the tracks are all identical here. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just that here I'm very interested in learning about these different companies. But not only that, but you're only going to be playing with a certain set of the companies that could be made available. Like you're talking about, this is a game that has, if I'm not mistaken, Ray, a planned expansion for it as well, right?
Yeah, we have a few ideas. So the first is there is right now a problem with the game that we're trying to sort out, and that's once you max out your company near the end of the game, you want to do more with it, and we don't really have an ability for players to do that yet. So we're testing out the idea of allowing you to purchase additional factories and sort of attach them to your company. And our goal is to actually launch with that. Either as, depending on the price, because we got to keep in mind, like, we can't do too much at once, but at the same time, we want to provide an excellent experience for everyone. That's one expansion idea, and then the other is unions. So a lot of people don't know that Chicago's kind of the starting boiling point for the birth of unions in America.
Yeah, that and like Milwaukee right north to it. I mean, that's like almost one connected metro. It's really where like workers' rights, where like blue collar jobs actually paying a living wage.
Yeah, and Chicago's in particular is very famous for that, for what was called the Haymarket Massacre, or the Haymarket bombing. And there was the other interesting thing. There were several socialist newspapers in Chicago at the time talking about, workers' rights and civil rights. I'm not trying to push a political, it's just historical, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then that played into like the union. So, one of the things that you can do in the game, and we're looking at ways to make this kind of play into that historical, the birth of unions storyline, is you can automate, you want to automate workers as you're playing the game, because it allows you to produce more. And so, the thought is, well, if you automate a worker, they go to the union track, and then if you get so many, then bad things start happening, like, Haymarket Square blows up.
Oh, dude, right? Make it like thematic events from the time period that everybody has to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. So that is kind of in the works of, and I don't know if we'll actually release with that. With this one, but that's something that we definitely want to do. We want to tell the story of the birth of unions in Chicago during that time period. The other thing that's important to mention is, right now we have the base game solid with 10 companies. We actually have upwards of 25 total companies over the lifetime of the game planned. So, in the game that you played, there were only 10 available, but there's going to be a lot of them. And so from game to game, you're only going to choose a subset of them to add to that replayability. So that one, you play NK Fairbank and it's really good this game. Next game, it may not even be available for you. Now your choices are, H&M and Armour and Company. Well, I guess I'm going to go with Armour and Company or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of replayability there as well, and we want to tell the story of those companies. We want to tell the story of them, and this is like, we had to just to give everyone that's listening a sense of scale of Chicago. There were over 100 companies. Like I think it was even maybe over 150 separate companies that has significant history in Chicago, and we had to pull out and curate the ones that we wanted, and we barely scratched the surface. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do with this game long term.
Yeah. Well, one thing I was kind of curious about, because these are like named companies and stuff. Will you be able to have those names like in the final version, like from a legal standpoint, trademark, all that kind of crazy stuff?
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
alone. Yeah,
So,
nice.
so copyright allows for social commentary, and since we're telling a story with the game, it's a very much a historical game. We can get away with that. We can actually get away um, with actually including any corporate art produced before 1926. It's all in the public domain. So, old stock
Oh, okay.
certificates, old ads, anything like that is all in the public domain, and we can use it to our heart's content. Works after a period of time are meant to be shared and are meant to be remixed and are meant to be transformed into other works of art. And so we definitely consider this game. It sounds pretentious, but from a legal perspective, it is a work of art. And
Yeah, it
and
Sure.
counts.
Yeah,
and
it
it
is
is
from a legal perspective, and just from if our listeners have been actually following along with what you've been saying so far, it's I can say it very much deserves that comparison. And the artwork that you've got for the game so far looks great. But anyway, I don't mean to distract from what you're saying.
Well, and hey, when I was at the Museum of Modern Art, they had a video game area. If they can have a video game area, they can dang well have a board game.
yeah. I mean, the one thing that we're kind of sticky on right now is trying to get the Chicago Historical Society involved and get their take on the game. We would love to have like their stamp on the box, official Chicago history. Kind of like just emblazoned
nice.
on the front. And also, we've used their online. They have an online Chicago encyclopedia that we've used for research. That they allow for research. And so, we want to take some things from that and kind of include in the game. And that, because they're curating content, is their copyright. So that is a place where, unless we do significant transformation to that, we can end up into legal issues. But I'm sure that as the game gets closer and closer to the timeline, they will be more than happy to work with us. So I'm looking forward to that there. And if not, we have a contingency and we can work through it.
Mm-hmm. No, to me, I'm very excited with this. What I really wanted to finish on, just to come back to our topic, is really we're talking about hybrid games here, and there's a fine line you need to really be able to tiptoe on when you're making a hybrid game, because people really do tend to I don't know, like, we all have an obsession with labeling what it is that we like, and I think everybody does it to a certain extent. I don't know how helpful it is, but I think that it's at least helpful in advertising. It can be helpful for products. I'm not talking about for people and demographics and stuff. When you say, I'm making a game that's like an 18xx game, you're going to turn a lot of heads, and they're going to have a specific heuristic. They're going to have like, this is how 18xx is played. When you say like, I'm making a heavy Euro economic game, you're going to turn a lot of heads that way too. So I mean, what you're doing is you're attracting potentially a larger audience, but you're also bringing on, like this is something it's not really something that's been done before, at least not to this level. Anytime I've seen stocks incorporated in a game, in a Euro style game, it seems like they're always very restricted by the game. Here you've got more of a free open stock market like you see in an 18xx game. Anytime I see an 18xx game, usually you're not, the game is like entirely mathed out to start with. Obviously 1822 is starting to open doors towards like variability as the game goes on, random companies being made available at certain times. And I honestly think though that like it's that where you got to tiptoe there is you've got to be able to please both of these crowds, and somehow also carve out a little identity of your own, because you're only a hybrid category if you're like the first one. You know what I mean? Like after that, it just could become a genre. It could become, like, oh, this is one of those heavy Euro economic games. Could become like, oh, this is one of those with a stock market. You mean like, like City of Big Shoulders or whatever game cuts through that path. So I'm very excited for what you're trying here. I really like the idea of mixing these together, and I think that you've got a little bit of a backbone also in terms of just your thematic integrity here and attention to detail there that's going to entertain as well.
Yeah, I think anytime you try to do something that is the intersection of two different genres, you have to approach it from the right perspective. We've actually, if you look at the Board Game Geek page, there are a lot of people in the 18xx community who kind of spoken out that this isn't an 18xx game, because early on in development we're like, oh, it's an 18xx Euro game, and people were like, it's not 18xx, dude. And I'm up for like, I haven't really responded to that particular questioning in detail yet, because I kind of want to give the game a chance, and then like we're not going to put the 18xx label on the side of the box, right?
Of course, yeah.
But if the community at whole says, oh, that's an 18xx game, then I would be happy to be part of that genre. If people say, no, it's a Euro game, and it's like, well, that's great, that's what we're going to go with. You have to be careful that you don't anger those two groups. Like, whatever you're trying to do, when you're trying to intersect two things, a lot of people don't care. What you're like, they don't have a strong opinion, but at the same time, a lot of people do have a strong opinion. They're and it's not a fault; it's a benefit. They're really passionate about what they play.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you have to kind of position it in such a way of saying like, hey guys, like I'm not trying to change the definition. And it's totally up to everyone else to try to figure out whether or not this is something you like or you don't like. But what we're really trying to do is bridge a gap. And we're trying to, hopefully maybe this is a game that, 18xx people will play. Maybe they'll play a little bit more Euro games. Or maybe this is something more Euro gamers will play and they'll start playing more 18xx games. And I think anytime that you can bridge a gap, you're going to, even if there's not a profitable benefit for us as a company, there's definitely a community benefit.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the things that I think, and this is not a dig at the 18xx community, but there's a general, like, for Euro gamers, there's a general sort of off-putting, almost, there's like that second niche out there, right? Those are the XXers. It's the same way like people think about war gamers. Oh, they're playing Campaign for North Africa, and you walk up and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I love what you guys are doing. Like, that's interesting. But that's not for me. I'm not a war gamer. I couldn't sit down and do that. And then you take those same people, those Euro gamers who, and this, again, not a dig at Euro gamers, just in general, thinking about, people like different kinds of games. So it's not accusatory. I don't want to anger anyone. But, you show them Maneuver, right? Jeff Horger's game Maneuver that came out GMT a few years ago, and they go, oh, I really like that. Or you show them Summoner Wars. Right, Summoner Wars it's a war game with cards to an extent that's been Euroized in some way. Or you show them Memoir 44. There's a great example, right? And it's like, oh, that's a game that bridged the gap. And I know for me personally, I don't want to play a long, campaign. Well, Campaign for North Africa is like the super extreme, but like I want to play a heavy war game, but I'll sit down and play Memoir 44. I have no problem playing that. So, and I know war gamers who like Memoir 44. So the hope is like, you got to turn the intersection into a union, right? You've got to like, I'm a programmer, so I think in set theory, but you gotta kind of say, hey guys, let's not be divisive. Let's come together and let's just have fun together. And so that's the way I think you gotta kind of approach it.
Yeah. And I think too, the other aspect that's kind of weird, because I wouldn't describe myself as a diehard 18xx player. Like, I play a lot of Euros and other things too. But if anyone just is under the delusion that you can have these separate game worlds anymore, like, I just don't see that. Like, everything now is like, there used to be the American style and the European style, and now it's like, no, let's borrow from them. Let's borrow from them.
Right.
It's just a matter of the degree of the borrowing you're doing.
Right. I think it's important to like recognize is that that's a good thing.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
That's going to breed more creativity, and then you end up with games that are heavy themed but are Euro, like Mind Clash. Like it's almost like they played a lot of Fantasy Flight games and they went, how can we make these Euro games and keep them heavy? Or you got, designers like Vital Lacerda. You got Lisboa, which is a super heavy, but also super historic thematic game going on. That is almost his own genre, honestly. Lacerda's games are Lacerda games. And Feld games are Feld games. But but they're taking from a lot of different inspiration. And I think as gamers, we need to realize that, almost every modern game we play today came from D&D. And D&D, almost everything thematically from D&D when it first got started came from wargaming and came from Tolkien.
Yeah, I was going to say Lord of the Rings, and yeah.
So everything is a remix of something else, and that's something that keeps the board game hobby alive and interesting and fun. And I mean, I would hate to see another release of the same game I played last year or 2 years ago. I want something new. I want something meaty. I want something different. Every single game that I buy. And if it's the same thing, like on the flip side, you get, 20 Kickstarters for Cards Against Humanity clones.
Yeah.
It's the same game over and over again. And everyone rolls their eyes at that.
Yeah.
Right? And then recently I saw a Kickstarter for something called, what is it? Bogus News, I think it was. But it looks a little like Cards Against Humanity, but it's a little twist on it, right? It's got a little bit of a remix there. And so I'm actually I don't know the designers. I have no idea who's producing that, but that's something that I look at and I go, as a consumer, I look at that and I go, what are they doing there? Like, what's going on with this that's different, that's interesting? And am I going to want to play this as a social game with my friends?
No, I'm right there behind you. I think that that you're looking at how to mix things. And to me, honestly, I think the only future I might ever have, and I'm not saying in any way that I have the ambition to do this, but like, I think there are creative people and I think there are analytical people, and you don't see me creating anything. So, but I think that what you can do is you can kind of synthesize things that have already been created, and something that you're forced to do as a teacher. Like I've never had an original idea as a teacher, but I don't think that's made me an unsuccessful teacher, because everybody else has great ideas, and sometimes I just see one and another and put them together, and if that's creative, then I guess maybe I am. But it's if you can get people excited about it, which I do think, I do think there's a market in a lot of places for intersection. I mean, obviously you're not going to want to say like, okay, so this is an 18xx game, but it's almost like a mixture of an 18xx game and a Take That card game.
Yeah.
There's some bad ideas,
right? But I don't know, man. I bet you somebody could make that work.
I still want to make 18xx the dexterity game.
18 Sodor.
18 Sodor.
But you know what? I really like ideas like that, where you look at something, you're like, there's no way that's going to work. And then you sit down and you play it. I will immediately buy a game at a con if I sit down and I look at a game and I'm like, there's no way that's going to be good. like there's just no way with that, what they're doing there, that does not mix. And then you sit down and you play it and you're like, oh my God, this is a good game.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right? I don't know how many times I've seen that.
I've been there before.
I refer to it as the same way of experiencing the next best awesome food item you're going to eat. You've got to take the chance of basically be vomiting in the toilet 5 minutes later.
Which is funny because
find the best thing ever.
Which is funny because I want to hold Andy accountable here for his quote. His quote saying that, like, oh, new things can be cool. And I want to see, like, in our private group chat, he recently listed a board gaming award. What was that one, Andy? The board gaming award. And then there's a board gaming award of which there was like 5 games nominated, one of which was Tramways. And Andy's comment was to the tune of like if Tramways doesn't win, this award is a scam. Like,
that's because it was up against Great Western Trail and Terraforming Mars.
Oh, Great Western Trail is so good. You saying Tramways is better than Great Western Trail?
Oh God, hands down, I'll play Tramways over and over again.
This is also Andy saying this.
I'm gonna have to go get it.
Tramways is a really great game. Really cool stuff.
Western Trail, so I played it and enjoyed it. But yeah, Tramways hands down it's basically just it's Age of Steam, the Euro game with a little more involved in it.
Age of Steam, the deck building game. Age of Steam, the Martin Wallace deck building game. Somehow it's it's really cool.
With the most insane auction known to man. Like, you can pay more to go last than you did to go first. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, that's you should try that out if you haven't. It's so good.
I'm going to now. In the last year, I talked about Anachrony being really good, but like in the last year, I think Great Western Trail is probably one of the best games to come out in a few years. And for you to tell me that Tramways is better than Great Western Trail,
at least for me,
tells me I have to play Tramways. Like
mileage may vary,
gotta do it.
but
Right.
yeah, no, it's really good. I've really liked it. But yeah, I don't know. So when it comes to the hybrid games, I just think like to a lesser or greater degree, pretty much all games are hybrid games anymore. But it's just how much it borrows from one camp or another, and all of that.
My favorite hybrid game is probably Copycat. I've only played it a couple of times, but it's my favorite hybrid because the rule book at the back, it literally says, I stole this from Dominion. I stole this from this, right? And he got permission for all that because he's Friedemann Friese, and Friedemann Friese can do what he wants, and nobody will bat an eye because he's brilliant. And on the back of the rule book, I stole this from this, I took this from this, and I think he was frustrated with people getting kind of caught up in that, like, oh, you took that mechanic from that game? Like, well, yeah, nobody really owns mechanics. Like, we're all kind of just building better fun as we can go, Like, and I love that, like, the snarkiness in the rule book. It's just like, At
the same time, giving credit to it and poking fun at
right,
an aspect of society. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that was a really good. I mean, we got to touch on a lot of the things that I was hoping to, and talking about, like, what are we looking for as designers. I really like your perspective here, Ray. It's a lot more like, I don't know, when I get to, as you mentioned, the niche within the niche, which is a lot of ways I think of 18xx games. I'm so used to finding like just a very, I don't know, like, it's a hard nut to crack, and I find that, like, what you're talking about in terms of wanting to bridge these gaps, in terms of wanting to create a union at the intersection. I think that that's something that is it's a noble cause, and I'm glad to hear that you're taking it up. And I really hope, I hope that we see people take you up on the offer of that print and play, like you've mentioned, making things available. Also know that print and play, if you play the print and play, give comment on it, you get entered in a drawing, right?
Yes, that's correct. So if you go to parallelgames.com/when COTBS, so City of the Big Shoulders anachronized, or not anachronized, initialized. There we go. We'll go with that. When COTBS, that will take you to a playtester feedback form, and anyone who gives us playtest feedback, we're gonna give away 5 free copies after the Kickstarter ends to people who help us playtest the game. And also, you'll be, if you want to opt into it, we'll put you in the rulebook as a playtester, just as a little thank you for giving us feedback early on. So we want to hear everyone's comments, what they have to say about the game.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for that awesome discussion, guys. As we always do, we're going to go ahead and look towards the future here by hyping a few games on our way out the door. Let's go ahead and kick things off with a hype from Andy, who's talking about a game that I'm actually going to be interested to hear about.
Yeah, which is, coincidentally enough, a hybrid game.
Nice.
Nicely done, Andy. Nicely done.
Yeah. That's what we call an actual transition.
Really? Okay, great. I'm taking notes.
Anyway, so I'm going to hype a recent GMT release. I ended up not noticing this one until after the P500 thing is done, so I have it pre-ordered from another place. But the game is called A Time of Crisis. So being that it's a GMT game, it's obviously historical. It takes place during the time of the Roman Empire, when kind of everything's going to crap. The barbarians are at the gates, society is falling apart. Emperors are cropping up here and there and everywhere, and you have your pretenders, you have your real emperor, and that kind of thing. I managed to kind of give a rough read through the rule book, so that is really neat. The thing that I'm kind of interested about this one is, normally, if I make a list of mechanics that I like versus those I don't, deck building is pretty low for me. Like, it's not among my most favorite mechanics. This game is a deck builder, and at the same time a light war game. And so that initially was weird, but a couple people's opinions who I respect in the gaming world were like, no, this game is brilliant. This is done right. And so based on their opinion alone, I went ahead and just pre-ordered it. And then I kind of went back and looked at the rules. And it does look like the kind of deck building I would enjoy. So the thing about a deck builder that kind of bugs me is that it seems like there can be just a solved set of cards. It's like, okay, well, if I wanted to look it up, I could find the perfect arrangement of cards to buy that would give me the most optimal strategy of winning. I also don't particularly like it when a deck builder is just about building the deck. What this game kind of reminds me of actually a little bit is, as deck building is to Rococo, this is deck building to a war game. In that, I mean, the deck is used to take actions on the board. So the way you buy cards is based on how many provinces you control. So there's an economy to that. So you don't get to play cards that allow you to buy cards. You have to control territories. That gives you your ability to buy cards as well as thin your deck. So it gives you an economy you can use to thin the deck, to buy cards, to do things to make your deck better. The other thing that's nice is you get to choose which cards you're going to use. So that's kind of how it reminds me of Rococo. It's like, I get to choose these 5 cards. I'm going to play them this turn, then they're going to go in my discard pile. And before I can pull them back in, I've got to go through the rest of my deck, which is how I kind of like it. I like having that freedom of choice. At the same time, there is going to be combat in this game. There is some dice rolling for combat determination. Now, you do have some setup to mitigate some of that luck. Part of that's going to be through your deck. Your deck's going to give you how many combat points, for lack of a better term, you can spend to buy dice. Based on what kind of legions you're sending in is what your 2 hit rolls are going to be based on. The thing is,
what's that doing in this game? Ugh.
Yeah, that's Joe. There's dice rolling. He'll hate it. No. But the thing that's kind of also nice about this game is it is very much not multiplayer solitaire. There's going to be an initial setup. There's going to be a the first turn's going to be easy, where, probably you can kind of suss things out to where you're not going to beat each other's face. But after that, like, it's tooth and nail. Okay, the only way I can progress is if somebody else loses ground. And so there's that going on. And then somebody maybe says, okay, I've got enough. I'm declaring myself emperor. Okay, well, now everyone's out to get you because controlling Italy is really, really good. And so that is kind of what I'm looking for. So it adds history, it adds some Euro mechanics with deck building into a light war game. And it just sounds like an interesting combination. And I'm seeing a lot of buzz about this game cropping up as the release is getting in people's hands, and people are really, really enjoying it. So I don't know. I'm interested to try it out.
I'm totally being facetious there when I say that, about the roles here. It sounds to me like an incredible system. I mean, and it looks to me like it's going to marry together deck building to a genre that can help Andy get over his irrational fear of deck building.
Yep, exactly. You make it like Rococo, even though it does have the you buy a card, it goes in the discard pile.
Oh gosh, Andy, I don't know, man. That's been deal breaker in the past. This sounds really interesting to me. I think that, honestly, if I was going to say, obviously Donald X. Vaccarino at Dominion made my favorite sole deck builder, because I think it's just, it just does deck building. But Martin Wallace, man, his games, he just takes deck building and he stretches it to so many different places and makes what I would call a hybrid game. Like, what Study in Emerald? I just played that. That is just incredible. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to talking more about it. Obviously, now's not the time, but thank you, Andy, for your hype there of Time of Crisis. And can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, all right, just making sure. Crickets usually that means that my internet is bad. It's been better at this new house we moved into, but anyway.
Sometime I'm just gonna hold and not respond just to let Joe go on thinking his internet's
Yeah, well, or I'll switch over to the camera view so I can see you and make it look like you're talking, where you're just mouthing, silence,
exactly.
and then start, start getting upset, and then I'm gonna like reset my computer, and then we'll lose the episode. Andy, this is a great idea.
Remember, I derail things.
Yeah, like 18xx reference, I suppose. So I think I'm the one who derailed that one, though. Anyway, moving on. My hype for this episode is I feel like the Euro-iest Euro that's ever come from anyone that's not Feld, and that is a game called Nippon, or Nippon. It is the way that you say Japan in Japanese, I believe.
Yep.
And the game is by What's Your Game, which has been making a really big splash among heavy gamers with their releases Madeira, obviously Nippon. They've got a few other ones, Zangwo, and those are three really popular ones. They also originally had
Vinos was actually originally theirs before Eagle Griffin got it.
Which one was?
Vinos.
Oh yeah, that's right. The original version of Vinos was yes, absolutely Vinos. So I mean, like they've got quite a pedigree at this point. They have a brand recognition going on, and so Nippon, what you are doing is you are removing workers from 5 different banks of workers, and you have 2 different options of an action you can take every time you remove a worker. These workers are colored, and basically you're going to be filling up your own bar of workers, and whenever you get multiple colors of workers, that's bad for you. You have to pay money. Anyway, you're making companies. You are doing a lot of really Euroized things, but it all feels very economically tied together. And I was really impressed by my first play of this. That's why I'm calling it my hype, because it's a game that needs multiple plays for me to ever give my opinion on it. But just know that I am super hyped to play Nippon.
Cool.
Again, and a third time, and more times after that. And it seems like a game that's really going to have that staying power. So that's my hype of Nippon. And
Awesome.
Go ahead.
So is it my turn to hype a game?
Oh, sure. I was going to introduce for you. You're actually, so What's Your Game did one of Vital's, I think Vital listed his first games, Vinos, for the first time. And unfortunately, he was wrenched from that company, and now he's doing games for Eagle Griffin, but their production is something quite incredible, and you've got the newest one to hype for us right now, Ray.
Yeah, I was able to pick this up at Origins. Thankfully, Eagle Griffin, I think, went on Board Game Geek and actually asked their backers, like, hey, do you guys mind if we actually sell a few copies at Origins? And most people were actually surprisingly pretty cool about it. And so I want to thank all the backers who were cool about it, because now I have a copy, and I was not able to actually back it myself, and I kind of got in at the last moment there. But I picked up Lisboa, and I am super hyped about this game. It is absolutely beautiful. I love historical games that tell the story of a city. I mean, there are a lot of Euro games that are like Bruges, for example, where it's like, oh, it's cards, and we put a name of city on it, and there are canals and stuff, and it's okay, yeah, sure, it's Bruges. But Lisboa screams Portugal. You've got the blue and white tile art everywhere. I think Ian O'Toole has this amazing, fantastic art. And also, for those that don't know, I'm again going back to like Chicago and the history. Lisboa, Chicago suffered the Great Fire. Lisboa had like 3 fires, a tsunami, flood, like the entire city was
earthquake,
right? An earthquake on top of that. And so one of the things I really like about this game is that you have to turn the rubble into new buildings. Like, you're picking up rubble, and at the same time, that rubble helps you carry more goods, and then you're packing that. I think thematically it works into like your all of the rubble got like packed into the new walls to help against future earthquakes and future fires.
So you actually build with the rubble.
Yeah, you actually build with the rubble, and it's got you're courting with the king, and you're courting with different officials, and you've got shipping, and you've got economics, and you've got kind of building out a Tableau collective sort of Tableau building of these buildings on the game. And of course, I'm kind of reading here from I read the rule book, I went through it. I have not yet had a chance to play it yet. Unfortunately, even though Vital was at Origins, I wasn't able to actually have him teach the game to me like he did so many other lucky people. But the board game is massive. Eagle Griffin's production quality on this deluxe version is insane. Like you get it the moment you open up the box. There's two little like finger holes at the bottom as you're lifting up the box, and then there's this beautifully vacuum formed tray inside. The player trays or the player boards are multi-leveled, so you have places where you can kind of put your cubes where they're kind of inset into the board. It looks amazing, and I'm just salivating thinking about playing it. So yeah, this weekend this is going on the table at Cabs, and we're definitely gonna play it at least once, if not 3 or 4 times. We'll see.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement for Lisboa, and I think that it's really cool that Vital came over to teach that to people that had purchased the game, and just to show it as a demo. I got a chance to talk to him, and Vital says it's his best, so it's going to be quite. I think it's going to be quite the game. I'm looking forward to it myself as well, and I kind of wonder, where it's going to end up placing, in terms of is it his most complex game or what exactly he's going for.
Oh, it's easy. You draw a card and play a card.
Of course. Yeah,
like
you have
one worker. What? It's
Vinhos and Kanban. It's a worker placement game. You only have one worker.
Exactly.
It's
easy.
Yeah. There's nothing easy about it.
I would say after playing Kanban and playing Vinhos, I think this might actually be more reading the rule book, it feels. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of things you can do, but it feels straightforward just from reading the rules.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good, because Vinhos felt straightforward to me. Kanban, I think I watched the heavy cardboard playthrough, and I think I finally maybe understand that game to some degree. Right. I could play it again and maybe know what I'm doing now. I agree with you on Kanban. I bought it. I've got to play it a couple times, and I'm like, The one that I haven't played from Vital yet, though, is the Gallerist. So maybe after breaking out Lisboa and giving that a run for its money, I'll finally cave and buy the Gallerist and get that to the table as well.
I think my ideal Vital Lacerda game, having played Vinhos, Kanban, and the Gallerist, I think it's somewhere in between the Gallerist and Kanban. I really like the way that Kanban's game works, but I don't really like the way that its goals are distributed and the way that the chairs worked and stuff. But I liked the way that the Gallerist did the goals a little bit better. So I think that it's somewhere in between those, and maybe that means it's Lisboa.
Maybe.
Or the real Vinhos.
Yeah. Maybe I need to play the real Vinhos, but anyway, that sounds. I've read the rules to both Vinhos, and I did not specifically think oh man, this is gonna be it right here. This is gonna fix it all for me. What I'm looking for. No, I think.
What, an investment bank? That's what everyone looks for in a game, isn't it?
Of course, Andy. That's right. That's right. Everybody looks for that. Yes, your son. How old is Will now? 7 years old.
Yeah.
That's what he wants.
No, he likes trains.
You need trains. Okay, well, trains and an investment bank. You need to make Ticket to Ride with investment banking.
No, I kid you, because
he just described 18XX.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, that's it right there. Yeah.
Next time somebody asks me what 18XX is, I'm going to say, it's basically Ticket to Ride with investment banking.
But no, I kid you not,
Except those routes are not yours. They're everybody's.
On the BGG page for for Container, he was talking about one of the new mechanics. He's like, "There's a foreign investment bank," and I'm like, "Oh my god! I now must kickstart this."
That sounds really interesting to me. Like, I think Container needed something like that, though. Like, having played Container, it's a really, really cool game, but it feels to me like a game that needs a bit more. It needs just a touch. You know,
you can't tank the economy like I did.
Did they update it in the reprint?
It wasn't. What was that?
They add foreign investors. In the new one of the modules is going to be 3 foreign investors. That's going to be kickstarted this year. Which the goal of that is to keep the economy a little more stable. So, like, the first play of it, I caused hyperinflation.
Right.
And like a couple weeks ago, I literally bottomed out the economy where, like, people, like, a shipment of 5 containers would go in and be like, the winning bid was 3.
Was that the game Joe Wiggins was in?
No. This was one I was playing with my group.
He came up to me at Origins and he was like, "We just played a game in Container." I'm like, "Oh, how'd it go?" And he's like, "We tanked the economy."
Yep.
Like,
I don't even remember how. I think that was the game where I created what I referred to as Wall Harbor. So it's just like everything bottomed out and nobody was sending things to auction. It was horrid. Like it just died and it took like forever for the game to recover from it.
I don't know. I haven't played Container in like at least 3 or 4 years, and it was just because I had those sorts of. I think it had the same problem that Wealth of Nations did. It's like if everybody goes for the same strategy, you can end up in that any sort of pure economic game runs into that where it's like, oh, we're in stagflation because we can't produce enough goods and inflation's super high. Or, we're in hyperinflation and now our money's practically worthless. Or nobody can buy anything. We're in a recession. And even though, for me personally, the mechanics of that is kind of brilliant, it's also, the question is like, is it fun to play? So hopefully with the foreign investors, I'll have to give Container another shot.
Because the reason is, once somebody starts pricing their goods at the lowest cost, like, it just behooves everybody to do that.
Right.
Like, it's an argument I had with somebody about an Infamous Traffic, Joe's favorite game.
A Foul Wind.
Yeah, Foul Wind. But the argument was, he's like, well, just play it nicer. Don't cut each other off at the knees. I'm like, the problem is, once somebody says, you know what, my best option is to cut somebody off at the knees, then everyone has to cut everybody off at the knees.
Yeah. And it really will become that. Like it's either you're going to let somebody win or you're going to take the direct action to screw them out of everything they need.
Yeah, or like me.
Just take away that supply chain.
You just immediately go there to begin with because you're like, we're going to end up here anyway.
That's really how, I think that, like, strategy gamers, like, we're playing games for the strategy of it. That needs to kind of be, if that's an element of the game, it needs to have an impact. And if it's something where people are complaining about it like that, then, it's, you're playing the game in the spirit of the game is what I would say.
I would say so too. I'd say it's up to the designer to limit the rules so that you don't run into. I always, I don't know, it's a little snobbish of me, but I always blame the designer. Like,
well, you are a designer, so you want to be held accountable as well. I would imagine. It's like a revolving door of that.
It's never my
accountability. It's never your fault. Okay.
No, of course I want to be held accountable. Like, you want people to have fun with your game, and like, if it's like one thing that always annoys me in games is like somebody's like, well, if you just played it this way, you'd have more fun. It's like, well, then what's the point of these other rules?
Yeah.
Like, why even have that as an option if that's not fun?
Yeah. Why are there? Yeah. Why make any overhead that doesn't need to be there? Like, why are there stocks in like Panamax? It's a game that I otherwise am fine with. I just don't. The stock aspect of that game is so inconsequential. And when anyway. To me, like, it's, I think that you need something along the lines of either a totally Euroized stock market or you need something like what you're doing, where it's an open stock market, but the decisions that you're making are going to have an impact on what is worth it to invest in.
Right.
I would just say, if you're going to make something a part of your game, make it a part of your game. Don't, like when somebody asks you about it, be like, well, yeah, you could kind of, you can play a Foul Wind and Infamous Traffic and go all merchants. Right, Andy? It's one of the strategies involved. You'll become obsolete in the late game, but it's a strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I think any strategy available should be a strategy that is capable of winning. Doesn't have to be capable all the time, but it should be capable. Yeah. And I think that is a sign of a well-balanced game.
Absolutely. Well, it has just been wonderful having you on here, Ray. It was great to meet you there at Origins. It was an awesome discussion here that we've had on the podcast, and I thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and join us.
Yeah, likewise, man. I had a blast. I had a lot of fun. It was great to chat with you and Andy and kind of get our geek on for a little bit. I liked it.
That's what this is about. Yeah, it's for us and for the listeners. And it looks like Joe Wiggins may have signed off, but he was
he has a little kid now, man. He needs
of course. Yeah, he was almost filling in for like a little bit. Not, of course, not Trent, but it was like we were expecting to have an extra person there, so it was kind of nice to have him join us. So anyway, I think if you're ever confused, those of you that are listening to this on the podcast on the on our feed or something on iTunes, you might want to check out. We do have all of these episodes currently broadcasted onto YouTube now as we live record them. Generally Thursday nights are when we record them. This one we are going. Generally, we're going to start somewhere around 8:45 Central Time. We moved it up a bit because we got our Eastern Time guy there, Ray, and it was absolutely fine. Me and Andy are teachers, so in the summer, it's usually pretty. We can work with schedules, right?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that too. It's funny because when you called me, I right got off work, and you're like, hey, we're about to do the podcast. I'm like, oh right, let's go do it.
He calls me. Oh, no, I call him. And his immediate response was, I didn't even really process the words that you said, but I just could tell that it was like you thought that I was a telecaller. I
think I answered hey, what are you selling to me today? I get.
To be fair, they have been insidious lately.
Yeah, they have.
It's all machines now, man. It's all machines. It's not even people. When it used to be people, you could at least kind of,
right.
Be like, there's at least some element of courtesy that comes out of you when you think this is another person's life and their time.
Oh, no. Did you, this is totally a tangent, but it's awesome when I found this. There's a guy that works for the telecommunications companies, and he got just sick of scam calls or telemarketers. And he's like, in order to affect this, I have to punish the business. Okay, what's the part of the business that costs the most money for them to operate? It's the human being.
Right.
And so what he's done is created these fake bots.
And call back.
yeah. So what they'll do is you call it and you'll be like, for me, I would buy a subscription to a female bot. I'll be like, okay, my wife handles the finances. Let me give the phone to her. And then you just dial your robot you've bought the subscription to, and it just answer things inanely. They have one that the female robot will start arguing with a fake daughter.
So on that topic, I was at one point getting 20 calls a day. I'd be at work and it would ring, and then 15 minutes later there'd be another call, and it'd be, and it's I don't know why they think that spammers ever get anything out of it, because you called me 20 times last week for the same thing and I didn't respond, so why would I suddenly respond now? And I'm in my 20s or my 30s. I don't really need Cialis calling me, but so anyways, I got fed up with it. I found on the App Store there's this app called RoboKiller on the App Store. You can install it on your iPhone, and it blocks calls before they even reach your phone.
Nice.
It doesn't even dial you. And then you can set autoresponders. And the one I have it right now is the disconnected number. So it'll block the spammer, and then it will do the disconnect tone.
Oh.
So that hopefully the bot will pick up, oh, the number's disconnected. I can't call this number anymore. I should remove it from my system. I would say I get, on average, maybe 2 calls a day now. And their list is like, I'm going to pull it up real quick on my phone. Their list is like over 100,000 separate numbers that they just automatically block. Like you won't even get an answer from.
Yeah.
123,380 numbers are in their spam list, and it's like $1 a month, totally worth the money.
Oh yeah. No, my wife's response to this was, "Can Heather please stop calling our house?"
Heather. Hi.
It's Heather from accounting services. Heather from the credit card company.
It is. It's Heather. It's always Heather.
No, yeah. We have a landline just because our in-laws call, and now it literally comes up and says, "This is spam."
Wow.
Nice. Just says that on your
on the caller ID. It's
ID.
like, don't answer spam.
That's nice. Well, yeah, we're gonna definitely stop spamming any listeners that thought I thought this was still listening. Maybe those people that are still listening.
Joe will quit calling you, asking for you to make him feel better.
Make me feel better. Yeah, I'm looking for that. Yeah, yes, please feed my insecurities. Anyway, the thing is, people I know that sometimes when I listen in the car, I'm like, all right, well, I'm just gonna leave this on and hope that it just goes through the next one in the playlist. And so the only people that are probably that have stuck through it this long are like, man, I cannot wait for the next episode to start. That's what I'd be at right now. I'd be like, ooh,
this is called the ending to every Punching Cardboard podcast ever.
Yeah, we prefer the soft ending, like a fade out. Hey, Josh, our editor, Josh, if you're listening to this, man, yeah, just give us a little bit of a fade out, like fade to black here somewhere in this. Nah, but for real here. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Good, the Bored, the Ugly. I'm your host, Joe Salon. I've been joined tonight by our special guest host designer,
Raven Chandler,
and
Andrew Dennison.
We hope that you guys have a great week of gaming. Come back here next week to join us on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah. There we go. All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast so Andy can finally start burping again.